Personally, I don't care if Tim Davie resigns or is fired. I don't care if there's an action plan. I don't care if they fire a couple of mid-range managers who had something to do with this Gaza Hamas propaganda documentary. None of it matters. I think we all know now, after years and years, different directors general, different teams, BBC News, BBC documentaries, all sorts of different departments at the BBC. They've got a problem with Jews. They've got a problem with Israel. It's institutional rot. It's set in so deeply that it seems to go through root and branch, so many different departments. Getting rid of one person won't make a difference. These reports won't make a difference. I mean, they've spent now months doing this report into this Gaza documentary. The report itself is a complete whitewash. It admits a breach of its editorial guidelines for failing to mention that the child who narrated the entire documentary is the son of a Hamas minister in Gaza. The whole thing goes through all this evidence that they had that the BBC didn't know. The production company they paid did know, but apparently didn't think they should tell them. There's a dispute over why they didn't tell them. There's a disputed phone call mentioned in a footnote in the report. And yet at the end of it, they come out and say, well, we think the production company had good intentions. They were a bit overwhelmed with the production and all the notes for compliance. And
they're a bit overwhelmed. So they just forgot to mention this thing, which was absolutely fundamental to the trust that people would have had in this documentary. And more
importantly, something that was discovered in one night by the incredible investigative journalist David Collier. But he watched the documentary, stayed up overnight, using his skills and social media. He found all of this out in one night. They had hundreds of thousands of pounds of our money. They had a massive team making this documentary. They had months to make it. And this child, we're told from this report, was included in the taster tape at the very beginning of all of this process, of the development of the documentary. The development of the documentary, the report admits, started in-house at the BBC. So their attempts to palm this off on the production company don't seem entirely convincing to me. The idea that this was just an oversight, it's absolutely outrageous. If it was an oversight, it shows absolute failure on the part of the director, the co-director, and one staff member in Gaza who they say knew about this. All three of these people, the report says, knew about this. And none of those people thought it was worth mentioning. The claim in the report, it's outrageous, is that they thought that he had a technocratic or civilian role. The guy had the word minister in his title. How can anybody, never mind somebody with knowledge of Gaza or Palestinian society, how can anybody think a minister or a junior minister is a civilian in Gaza? If you are affiliated with Hamas, Hamas is a proscribed terror group in the UK, and this report makes it quite clear. They paid money to his family. They say that that was all right. They've done their sanctions checks. They put him as the main voice of the documentary. That was all right. It was just an oversight. So there's one little failing they made. It's just outrageous. It's disgusting. And if you read the whole report, it's just full of outrageous contradictions. It's full of these sort of rejections of anything. I mean, the fact that they mistranslated the word Yahud consistently from Arabic, it means Jew, to Israelis, so that they basically whitewashed the genocidal intent of the Palestinians who were speaking. They say, oh, that's colloquial Arabic. This is what they meant. Well, that's the point. If you don't translate for the BBC audience that Jew and Israeli are interchangeable in Palestinian speech, you rather remove the piece of information that they need to know, which is that they hate Israel because it's a Jewish state. That's the whole point. The report is so full of this stuff. It's an absolute disgrace. And I hope that Lisa Nandy does something a bit tougher than these, sound bites on the news, just saying how she's waiting for their action plan or they're going to be taking actions. It's just enough. British people shouldn't be taken for fools like this.
I just want to highlight one of the tweets that you've put out. You're always worth reading on Twitter, and you've written the BBC's report into its Gaza propaganda documentary as a whitewash. For example, it claims the production company also employed a translator researcher to check the contributor's social media and did not flag any issues. And there is a particular photograph which we can show on the screen now, and this is one of the children called Zakaria, the BBC featured in the film. As we can see, and I'll just describe this for people who are listening on the radio, this is a child who has a Hamas headband on. He's holding a rifle and he's standing beside a masked Hamas terrorist who also has a Hamas headband on as well. I mean, that was pretty easy to find and shows one of the children. We're not suggesting the child is a terrorist, but he is certainly being indoctrinated with the hate and with the propaganda of Hamas.
Yeah, spot the terrorist. Apparently difficult for the BBC with that image. That image, of course, comes from social media, but they hired someone to check all the social media, apparently.
You had one job.
The report was nothing wrong was found. And about that child, for example, the whole sequence of that child was something I actually revealed, which is that it was entirely edited non-sequentially. So the documentary had a section where they had a big screen, full screen graphic, day 245 of the war, day 245 of the war. The narration referred to specific attacks and locations. There was a map put up on screen showing specific locations. The voiceover explained a specific attack. Then they showed that child. Rather unbelievably, we were told he was a volunteer paramedic, this young child, and they had this whole sequence. If you watched the sequence, I saw that he changed shoes about 4 times, and his hair length changed during the sequence that was meant to happen in one day as he was helping them take people into hospital. They say in just 2 paragraphs of this report that took them months that this is all right, this is absolutely fine, this kind of editing under the BBC's rules, because they don't feel that it was intended to look like one day, even though it literally started with a full screen caption specifying one particular day. And they say that it was fine that that happened. They even note that they dressed the child, despite overlooking the shoes and the haircuts, they dressed him in the same T-shirt for each of the filming days. So they admit that the bits were filmed on different days. They admit that he was dressed in the same T-shirt to try and make it look like the same day. The documentary had a caption up for the whole screen saying it was on one day and a map specifying one particular event. And yet they say that it wasn't designed to give the impression of being about one particular part of the chronology of the war.
What on earth is going on? Why can't this report just tell the truth and be really straightforward in all of this?
Because the truth is that they know what they're doing. The truth is that they probably, in my opinion, knew what they were doing at the time. The truth is that now they can see it and we've shown it to them. It's undeniable, but to admit it would be to admit something dreadful, which is that they have a long-standing problem with reporting from Israel. They have such predisposed ideas, such an ingrained tendency to assume that everything that the state of Israel does is wrong and bad and sick and evil, and weirdly enough that nothing Hamas does is any of those things, when the reverse is the truth. One of them is literally an extremist Islamic jihadi tyranny ruling over the people of Gaza and attacking the people of Israel constantly for decades, and the other one is a democratic state fighting an existential war in extremely difficult circumstances. But rather than actually show that fairly, they're constantly sort of reporting on their own gut feelings that this Jewish state's a bit rotten, that these Israelis are doing something a bit wrong, and that these Gazans are all absolutely telling us an absolutely pure and innocent version of what's going on. The truth is, even just the portrayal of children in Gaza, it was like this weirdly chocolate box packaged Western version. One of the other children featured was this girl who we were told was a food influencer with 1 million followers on Instagram. It maybe sounds convincing for a British or Western child, but for a child growing up in this enclave, in the Gaza Strip, under strict Islamic law, in a family, and even that girl, they didn't reveal, there's a crowdfunder for her family that's raised something like €250,000 for that family. They didn't mention that this child effectively in Gaza is rich as Croesus. So all of these elements that they don't mention, if they wanted to make an honest film about the experience of being a child in that horrific war zone, they could have done it. They could have showed many of the complexities, but they didn't show one of the ways in which Hamas tortures the population, puts them in the line of fire, abuses children by manipulating them into these weird propaganda roles that they then feed to the Western media. They didn't show any of that, and this report didn't touch any of that. It just went through this really weird, very BBC thing of procedure, procedure, procedure. Here are our guidelines. Here is how they did or didn't measure up to them. We give them the benefit of the doubt, even though it seems very strange that they didn't think to mention this to us. I think they've got so much to answer for. So much.
Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Sacerdoti there, journalist and broadcaster. Appreciate him joining us.